We have the privilege of sharing with you some things about our dear sister GranMary. We kind of left it open. If Roger was going to be able to do it, we were kind of left that open for him, but you have a substitute. And it's things that he has written as he remembered his dear mother. It says, Mary Dayton was born in Asheville, North Carolina in 1910. And when her father was no longer engaged as a carpenter, he was working at the Biltmore Mansion. The family moved to the south side of Chicago in 1913. That's where he continued that trade. He died in 1952 at 97. And his amazing story goes on, too young to fight in the Civil War, he met his wife, Mary Jane Pugh, who was from Salisbury and Concord, North Carolina area, with relatives and family, descended from a Haitian deserter from the British in the Revolutionary War. Mary Jane had 11 children, 9 surviving, of which GranMary was the youngest. Mary Jane passed in 1964 at the age of 98. Mary Lee, you'll have to excuse me, we know her as GranMary. He put her down as Mary Lee, but we want to call her GranMary with his permission. She lived at home, busy with brothers and sisters and their friends. She attended Lindblom High School, where she met my father, Gilbert Reuben Dayton. And after graduating and 2 years of junior college, married him in June of 1934. His father lived about 3 miles from hers, so getting together was no problem. At first, they lived on the second floor of his family home, living there through the depths of the Depression until he was transferred to Jackson, Michigan by his employer in '47. In the years she lived in Chicago before Michigan and after moving back, one of her greatest pleasures was taking the train downtown for a day of shopping. She would drop me off on the 4th floor, guess where? The toy department of Marshall Fields, knowing that I would be right there until she returned, much to the relief of the salespeople. and go to the restaurant on the 8th floor for lunch. She did not learn to drive until 1952. GranMary remained a homemaker, engaged in caring for their only son, who was then in 3rd grade, and exploring the countryside with friends. She was a seamstress, making her own clothes, and in the beginning with crafts and natural arrangements. In '49, they were transferred back to Illinois, this time settling in a home in Clarendon Hills, a suburb of Chicago. The family lived there until '55, when moved to the next town of Hilldale, Illinois. GranMary was active in DEO, Daughters of American Revolution, Hillsdale Methodist Church groups, and Hillsdale Women's Clubs, and the Village Players, a summer stock acting company. All this while being a wonderful mother to an active teenager and high schooler who had just repaired his first player piano. She also continued her craft work and was marketing her productions to local merchants. In 1958, the family moved 120 miles south to Danville, Illinois, due to a new position opening for my father in the printing press field in my second year of college. I then transferred to the University of Illinois and got to know local piano dealers, repairers, acquiring another player piano, a Nickelodeon, and a Wurlitzer jukebox. She put up with all of these things and worked her way into a new church circle of friends. In January of '61, I joined the Army and married in May of that year. Finishing my training and being stationed in Chicago, later I was transferred to the field office in Rockford, Illinois, near my wife's hometown. A daughter, Janet, was born in April of '62. After a troublesome pregnancy, most of the time she stayed with my mother in Danville because they lived near a hospital. I then closed our apartment and lived with her, commuting a 160-mile trip every day each way on weekends. This happened again in October of '64. So GranMary was busy helping with 2 little girls now. In early '65, I left the Army, and about the same time my parents returned to Hillsdale, Illinois, because of another merger at his workplace, speaking of his father, and I was able to purchase a home in Clarendon Hills, the next town west. While he worked for several corporations, GranMary re-entered her clubs and church groups and doubled her craft work, now marketing her products downtown Chicago department stores and jewelers. She often took her granddaughters with her on fields of trips to gather natural materials from the fields in her side roads. Later, after I opened my first store in '71, she and my father would take care of the girls after school while the store was open on Thursday evenings. This went on for several years. When my father was put out of work by another corporate merger in '73, he said, I said I need more help in restoration and sales of player pianos, so he came to work for me and learned a new craft. He then suffered a stroke and passed in 1977. GranMary moving to an apartment in Clarendon Hills, after soliciting her help and taking work she could do for my business at home, I suggested she come 8 miles to my store and do the work there so she wouldn't be alone much of the time. This she did, until not wanting to drive in the increased traffic, she went back working at home. In '85, I purchased an abandoned grade school in Batavia, Illinois, about 20 miles further west, and began renovating it to an office building with residences on the 2nd floor and workshops and showrooms for finished pianos, antiques, and rollers on the 1st level. GranMary wanted to escape her apartment and have a new one prepared in the school building, so she designed, furnished her new quarters of about 800 square feet. She lived there and continued work until 1995, when she moved to a retirement home in Baker Hotel in St. Charles, Illinois. When that closed in '97, she moved to another home about 10 miles south, and in another year and a half to Juliet, Illinois, when Evelyn and I moved to Coal City to be closer to us. When Evelyn and I decided to retire to move to Greenville, I first mentioned to GranMary and told her I'm moving south too. She said, I'm moving south too, so load up the truck and find a place. In fact, she moved here before we and shared an apartment with Julia and Nestor from late 2002 to September 2005. She was still driving until 2005, but stopped because of poor eyesight. She then purchased a home on 124 Bradley, sharing it with the Barrios until 2010. In 2010, she moved to Haywood Estates. The other day, DeWitt Jones reminded me of her baptism, his oldest. Most recently, in 2011, she was hospitalized, moved to a hospice in Simpsonville, and from there to Laurel Bay nursing home facility. That Mary Lee resided at Ameris until January 19, 2014. Our thanks to those who kept her in their prayers and visited her. I just wanted to add one little thing, if Roger doesn't mind. When they moved GranMary to hospice, based on the doctor's orders, I think she was only there a week. She told the nurses, I want to go to church. They said, if you leave the building, you can't come back. So she left the building. I think she, am I correct, she was in hospice twice?
No, just there.
Just that one time? Okay. Because she was, listen, you couldn't put that dear lady down. And it wasn't until she had her last stroke, because she was here all the time. When we talked to her about baptism, she told us that in 1930, she would have been 17 years old then, that she came to know the Lord in a gospel meeting. And when she moved here to Greenville, Joe took an interest in her, and he gave her some things to read. And there was a book by John Bramhall called Living the Life. And as she read through that book, she was convicted by the fact, even though she had trusted Christ, she'd never been baptized. And so that's when DeWitt had the opportunity to baptize the oldest individual, GranMary. She was either 93 or 95. We can't remember. At 83 years old, we're having trouble remembering too. But she was such a precious lady, and thanks for allowing me to read this, Roger.